for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson. I'm your co-host.
My name is Jack Prince, your fellow co-host.
Jack, we have got quite a few topics to discuss today. Just had a primary election on Tuesday, so we have some of the results there. A Michigan judge has ruled on Michigan's 1931 abortion law. And it's a victory for pro-choice people. We'll talk about that. Plus, we got to talk about an update to the Patrick Lyoya shooting. Well, we should say the Patrick Lyoya murder to be more accurate. And lots of other stuff to talk about. Before we get started with today's show, a couple of reminders that you can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Tumblr at southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can follow us on YouTube by doing a search for Southpaws Radio. And you can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime at Spreaker, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, or Reason.fm by doing a search for Southpaws. And once you found our logo, you found us. We send links to our weekly episodes to our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube accounts. You can listen to us on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Saturday night at 11 Eastern. And you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, and KEPJ in San Antonio, Texas. Be sure to listen to us on your local Pacifica station if they carry us. If they don't, please call them and ask them nicely to please air our show. We would greatly appreciate that. And our companion show, Period End of Story, has just come out with episode number 4. My interview with Kathleen Larson of the Autism Alliance of Michigan is up and available right now for Pacifica. Also at Spreaker, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts. So please check that out there. It's a very, very enlightening conversation. A lot of stuff I didn't know. So let's go ahead, Jack, and let's start with our first story today. We had primaries on Tuesday, and there were quite a few of them across several states. We have some results here. This is Will Weissert, Mark Levy, and Gary D. Robertson writing for the Associated Press, dated May 18th. This is out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Donald Trump's preferred candidate in Pennsylvania's Senate Republican primary was essentially tied with a more traditional rival, while his pick for governor notched a commanding victory Tuesday as Trump worked to expand his hold on the GOP. Doug Mastriano was already surging in the governor's race when Trump issued an endorsement over the weekend supporting the far-right state senator. But Mehmet Oz, the celebrity heart surgeon endorsed by Trump, was locked with former hedge fund manager David McCormick in a race that was too early to call Wednesday morning. Pennsylvania law requires recounts when the margin between the top two candidates is 1/2 of 1 percentage point or less. With just a few hundred votes separating Oz and McCormick, the result may not be clear for several days. Tuesday marked the busiest night of the nascent primary season, with contests also being waged in North Carolina, Kentucky, Oregon, and Idaho. Both parties are choosing candidates to enter the fall general election when control of Congress, governor's mansions, and key election posts are up for grabs. In the perennial battleground of Pennsylvania, Mastriano's victory was notable for what it signaled about the direction of the GOP. With the future of abortion rights in question at the U.S. Supreme Court, Mastriano has said that he supports banning the procedure from conception with no exceptions. So he is a hardcore forced birth asshole. And I'm just going to call him what he is, because he's not taking into account pregnancies where the egg stays in the tube, which could kill the mother. rape, incest, anything like that. Just no exceptions whatsoever. Disgusting. Mastriano has also promoted Trump's lies about non-existent widespread voter fraud costing him the 2020 election, and was outside the U.S. Capitol when a mob overran it during the deadly 2021 insurrection. Let me just add, traitorous insurrection. Those were traitors. He's also been subpoenaed by the House committee investigating the Capitol riot following his efforts to name a slate of alternate electoral college electors in Trump's favor. If Mastriano were to win in the fall, he would shape how elections are conducted in Pennsylvania, where the governor appoints the Secretary of State, who oversees how elections are run. He has pledged to take the extraordinary step of requiring voters to re-register to vote, a move that would almost certainly encounter legal hurdles. Such positions could repel critical moderate voters in the general election, but speaking to his supporters on Tuesday, Mastriano denied he was an extremist. Of course he did, because they all deny it. Mastriano said, quote, "They like to call people who stand on the Constitution far right and extreme. I repudiate that. That is crap. That is absolutely not true." End of quote. He added that it was Democrats who have, quote, "gone extreme." End of quote. Bullshit. Not true. Jack, you want to chime in on this moron here?
Well, it's like at the zoo. You've got the snake house. Not the state house, but you go in the snake house, they're all snakes. You got some a little more deadly than others. You got some that'll squeeze the air out of you. You got some that are so poisonous that, they're lethal. And so all these Republicans, when you see them in a primary, it's like the snakes. Some are worse than others, but they're all snakes. And I think that Oz was actually a kind of a moderate. I think he played around with legalized abortion at one time. I think he even, I don't quote me, I'm not 100% sure. I think he supported Hillary, was friends with Hillary at one time. But the bottom line, for him to line up with the Republicans, he's a snake. And you'll get a lot of opinion from people that they're saying that Trump's endorsements are a high percentage, like a batting average. But in the case you mentioned, I can't pronounce his name. He waited. The guy had a huge lead. Then he goes in and endorses him. He knows he's got a winner there.
Yeah, Mastriano.
Yeah, and the article that you read, they emphasize the fact that he's maintaining his hold on the Republican Party. That's the news today. That's what's worrisome. It's not, is this Republican better than that Republican? So we hope that Republican wins the race. No, to me, that's inconsequential. What is consequential is every time they say that Trump put his money behind a winner and he won because of Trump, that strangles the chance for any obliteration of the current state of the fanatical far-right Republican Party. That's the news of the day. That Trump, he wavered a bit, but for the most part, he's going to rejoice in saying, my picks won the race.
Yeah, my picks are special. Let me go ahead and continue here. Such rhetoric from Mastriano was appealing to some Republican voters. In the town of Hamburg, Pennsylvania, Stacy Steinle, a 51-year-old school bus assistant, said she chose Mastriano because, quote, he was sticking by Trump and saying that everything was fraudulent. Everything he was talking about was making sense. End of quote. By the way, Steinle wore a black T-shirt that said, Biden is not my president or anyone else's based on legal votes. So right there you go. Cuckoo! Cuckoo! Here's a little bit of history on Mastriano. He is a retired Army colonel. He will face Democratic State Attorney General Josh Shapiro, who ran unopposed in the primary for the Democrats. Trump scored an easier victory early in the night when U.S. Representative Ted Budd clinched the GOP nomination for Senate in North Carolina. Trump's surprise endorsement last year lifted Budd, a little-known congressman, over better-known rivals, including a former governor. He quickly pivoted to a general election message focused on breaking Democratic control of Washington. At his victory rally, he said, quote, under Joe Biden, America is woke and broke. We need to put the brakes on this agenda for the sake of hardworking North Carolinians. End of quote. Bull.
I get tired of them waving the woke banner as if they even know what the hell they're talking about.
I'd like to wake them. I'd like to knock them out with a hammer to the head.
But we're still in the predicament as long as the puss-bellied Trump is breathing his venom. That's the bottom line, is that the hold that he has indicates future fascism. When you say he has a hold on the Republican Party, there's no ideology there. It's just authoritarianism. It's the advent of the end of our democracy. So that's what's at stake. That's what is frightening when you see that he can be a kingmaker.
Yeah, or a prince. Well, more like a prince maker. He's the king. Nobody is going to be above him. God forbid.
Right. He's not the kingmaker so much as he can make things happen so he remains the king. And
there you go. Yep.
I'm shaking in my my blue jeans. I really am. Just the prospect of what's on the horizon. If you really sit down and add the score up, you'll sleep. You just won't sleep sound. I've got kids. I've got grandkids. You have relatives. The future is on the chopping block.
Yep. Bud voted against certifying of the results of the 2020 election. He will face Democratic former state Supreme Court Justice Sherry Beasley, who is aiming to become North Carolina's first black senator. At a victory party, she declared that, quote, "This is our moment. We have the power to restore our values to our government in Washington. In this moment, we have the power to protect our rights," end of quote.
Yeah.
In another of the night's closely watched races, progressive John Fetterman easily won Pennsylvania's Democratic Senate primary just days after a stroke sent him to the hospital. The 52-year-old Fetterman is known for his hulking 6'8" stature and his tattoos that helped him build a political persona as an outsider. That, combined with his support of top progressive causes such as universal government-funded health care, was key in his easily dispatching Democratic rival U.S. Representative Connor Lamb, a moderate in the mold of President Joe Biden. Stephanie Taylor, co-founder of the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, said in a statement, quote, "Fetterman's victory shows the voters are fed up and want fighters. This should be a wake-up call to the entire Democratic Party establishment to fight harder against the fascists and those who obstruct a popular agenda," end of quote. Yeah, but the problem is the Democratic Party establishment are the fascists who are obstructing a popular agenda. Who put the screws to Bernie in 2016 and 2020? Really? Mm-hmm. You know? Just telling it like it is, folks. Fetterman's win was a positive for progressives after a series of losses in top races around the country. But Biden downplayed any coming squabbles between his party's left flank and traditional establishment, tweeting that electing Fetterman to the Senate, quote, "would be a big step forward for Pennsylvania's working people," end of quote. Yeah, that's because Biden's handlers, the owners of this country, allowed him to tweet that. You know what Biden really thinks? We don't have to tell you. All I got to do is go back into the archives of the show going back to 2015. You'll find out. Pennsylvania's Lieutenant Governor Fetterman could enter the general election campaign facing questions about his health. Following a stroke, he cast an emergency ballot from the hospital and tweeted Tuesday that he'd successfully undergone surgery to install a pacemaker. He said he was, quote, "on track for a full recovery," end of quote. Fetterman will likely face scrutiny over a 2013 incident when, shotgun in hand, he confronted a black man because he suspected the man was involved in gunfire nearby. The man, Christopher Miyares, was unarmed and said in a TV interview that he had been jogging when Fetterman, who is white, pulled up in his pickup truck and pointed the shotgun at him. Fetterman has maintained he didn't know Miyares' race at the time of the pursuit, denied pointing the shotgun at him, and said it wasn't loaded. Fetterman's opponent in the fall wasn't yet clear. Oz, the celebrity surgeon, and McCormick, who resigned in January as the CEO of Bridgewater Associates, one of the largest hedge funds in the world, were in an exceptionally tight race. Commentator Kathy Barnett, who had appeared to be gaining late momentum in the race, was trailing. Shortly before midnight, Oz said, quote, "we're not going to have a result tonight," end of quote, before vowing to Trump, quote, "I will make you proud," end of quote. McCormick struck a similar tone, saying mail-in ballots have yet to be counted. Quote, "we're not going to have resolution tonight," end of quote. Barnett, meanwhile, may have had her rise blunted by criticism from Trump. In a statement going into the election, he said, quote, Kathy Barnett will never be able to win the general election against the radical left Democrats, end of quote. Elsewhere, one setback for Trump came when North Carolina Republican incumbent Representative Madison Cawthorn, who was dogged by a series of high-profile blunders, lost to State Senator Chuck Edwards. Trump posted this week that Cawthorn, quote, made some foolish mistakes, which I don't believe he'll make again, end of quote. And he added, quote, let's give Madison a second chance, end of quote. Well, the voters said, nope, we don't want to give him a second chance. By the way, I read somewhere or heard somewhere that Edwards, in addition to being a state senator, is a McDonald's franchisee in the state. Also, Idaho Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin, whose bid to unseat Governor Brad Little in that state's Republican primary was backed by Trump, also faltered. This is the same lieutenant governor, while the governor was out of state, issued an executive order getting rid of mask mandates, and as soon as he walked back into the state of Idaho, he put the mask mandates back in place.
Well, we can go through the whole long list of snakes competing against each other. I think we need to concentrate on what it means, what it means to us that the Republican machine is rolling towards a complete takeover. What do you think, Darren, is the outcome of the polls that have Biden down to 36% approval, I think I saw? I'm not sure those numbers. Because as you read about these Republicans, I could give a crap. Like I said, one snake is worse or better than the other. Where are we headed? What are we going to do with the inflation that's going to sink Biden? And the border situation is going to sink Biden. On and on it goes. We're getting close to the edge of the falls. The falls are, and I don't want to tie it to Buffalo or anything, but that is kind of an indication of what happened in Buffalo. We're looking. People have a feeling that democracy is dying, is going to be decapitated in a matter of days, in a matter of weeks. So I lose a lot of initiative and real interest in seeing the primaries roll through with one more Republican getting endorsement from Trump. I need a heavy hitter somewhere in the Democratic Party to turn this thing around, to start to go after these people who are running out on the subpoenas and getting them into court. There is nothing that makes me feel like things will be reversed from a Republican in the presidency and a cabinet of baboons, absolute carnies. Can you tell me why that won't happen, Darren, based on this primary? I can't.
I can't either, to be truthfully honest, unless people finally wake up like they did in 2020 and say, Trump and his agenda is absolutely dangerous to this country, it's going to be dangerous to the state that I live in, and go out and vote Democratic. We've seen a few surprises. We saw one a couple of weeks ago right in Grand Rapids, Carol Glanville getting elected to 74th State House. That seat had not been held by a Democrat in 30 years. So I guess there's going to be a few surprises. But she was running against a guy that had said if a woman gets raped, she should sit back and enjoy it. Yeah.
Is it Cawthorn?
Yeah.
It's not Hawthorne.
Yeah,
Cawthorn, who was kissed by the king. Trump gave him an endorsement, a blessing. But there was just too many nude sex movies, videos that have been released to pull him out of the fire. So
and pictures of him in women's lingerie after going after the LGBTQ community. Yeah. And,
I don't know.
And not only that, I saw a news story where he basically told the press that he got invited to a sex orgy in Washington, D.C. I mean, really? God. This is what happens when you have people that, they want to say Trump. Oh, well, at least Trump tells it like it is. We've heard that before because George Carlin has talked about Bill Clinton in the same vein. Carlin, there's a new clip from Carlin. We'll play it on our anniversary show. There's a clip from Carlin where he says that Americans love their bullshit, and the reason why is because without it, the country would fall apart. And he gave the example of Bill Clinton being elected and reelected because He told everybody he was basically full of BS, and everybody said, "Oh, well, at least he's telling the truth. At least he tells it like it is." Where Dole, I'm a family man, and this and this and this, and that was all BS, and everybody knew it.
But can we talk about the abortion issue right now, which supposedly it could be anathema to the Republican agenda? What have the Democrats done in this last week to capitalize off of the 69% of Americans that think that abortion should remain for a woman's rights? There's a glimmer of hope there. Is there not? What did you see Biden's talk about abortion?
I did not see that.
Well, if I'm looking for a play in a football analogy that might win the game, trying to see a little bit better Republican win the primary as opposed to a long strike Hail Mary pass, like taking advantage of the January 6th investigations, of getting some momentum there, of taking the reality of overextension with the abortion policy that the Supreme Court, which we all know we're all pushed by Republicans and shoved down our throat. I'm looking for a winning play. I'm not seeing it with Trump's win-loss record with primary endorsements. I don't. I'm worried. And I'm really worried.
I'm not seeing it either. You can go back 10 years ago. We didn't see it back in 2014 when Rick Snyder got reelected as governor. We didn't see it. I called out the head of the Democratic Party in Michigan on air for 20 minutes. I didn't see it then. I haven't seen it in forever. I've forgotten what it looks like, Jack. Really, I have.
Yeah.
And this is after I'll admit it, I told them, this is what you need to do. You need to do this. You do this, you will win. Did they do any of it? No, they didn't. Because you know why? Because they think they know better and they don't want to hear from voters. Voters are a pain in their ass. That's the bottom line. All they care about the voters is when it comes to election time. I've said that for years and I'll continue saying it till they prove me otherwise.
Has there been a Democratic voice raised in Michigan at any place other than Dana Nessels that's questioned the prosecuting attorney in Kent County, questioned his ability to fairly judge in this murder trial, which has gone on now, not the murder trial, but potential
this investigation, yeah.
Yeah. There's no local Democrats saying, hey, we want to get some results. We want to see some action from the prosecuting attorney's office. This is going on months after the shooting.
Yeah.
What are you going to wait for? Some Friday afternoon in near Christmas?
Yeah.
When everybody's around the tree?
Oh, yeah.
It's crime. It's a crime, and I don't see any pushback from the Democrats in Kent County. I haven't heard a peep.
Jack,
not a peep.
Hey, Jack, I'll reiterate what I said on this show last week, and I'm going to double down on it based on a story that just came out Wednesday that Chris Becker, the Kent County prosecutor, the guy that's investigating the shooting of Patrick Lyoya, said on Wednesday that he's going to get the results from the manufacturers of the body cam and the taser either at the end of the week or the beginning of next week. You know what I said on last week's show? How much you want to bet that the decision comes out real late the Friday before Memorial Day? And I told you why. Everybody's going to be out of town cooking hot dogs and hamburgers and drinking beer at the lake and whatever. They're not going to be in town to protest. So that's what's going to happen. I guarantee it. If he doesn't put it out by the Friday before Memorial Day, I'll be shocked. I will be shocked.
Meantime, I'm not calling this a false flag, but in East Grand Rapids, at the homes of some of the city commissioners, the Channel 8 News has shown pictures to the public of what's called graffiti. In one case, a brick that's been wrapped and says
let's tell you what, Jack. Let's get to that. I was going to go into the abortion, but let's skip right to this since we're talking about Patrick Lyoya here. This is from Wood Television. This is being reported by several reporters, Joe LaFurgy being one of them, Megan Bunch, and Donovan Long. Out of Grand Rapids, police are investigating after bricks with messages angry over the police killing of Patrick Lyoya and demands to defund the Grand Rapids Police Department were found at city leaders' properties Monday night and Tuesday morning. In a news release Tuesday morning, the police department said that it's, quote, aware of multiple instances of vandalism that occurred overnight targeting city commissioners' private residences, end of quote. Investigators said they were reviewing security camera footage and looking to speak to any witnesses. News 8 learned of graffiti or bricks at or near the properties of at least 5 city officials, including City Commissioners Sunita Lanier, Nathaniel Moody, John O'Connor, and Kurt Reppert, and my favorite, Mayor Rosalynn Bliss. At O'Connor's house, defund GRPD and abolish police were spray painted on the driveway. A brick wrapped in a newspaper clipping with the name of Patrick Lyoya circled and "Blood is on your hands" written on it was found in the yard. Here's what Moody said of what happened Monday night. Quote, I have no problem with people protesting. I believe that everybody has a right to protest. But I also believe that when you begin to take it personal by coming to someone's residence, you've crossed the line. I think that line could be very dangerous at times because if you were to vandalize the wrong home, there's a strong possibility that the individual who lives in that home could be in a position where he or she, thinking that their home is being attacked, could retaliate. And I think that's the problem that we have to be careful of. End of quote.
Moody is an African American, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Moody, in my estimation, is quintessential establishment black leader.
Yes.
But what he represents, because I'm not going to argue about the merit of painting graffiti in front of these houses. I'm not going to attempt that. But what I will say is that somehow, by these circumstances, Moody now represents the establishment black voice in Grand Rapids, which is the dominant black voice in Grand Rapids. There has been no speaker that would come and try and defend the graffiti and say the frustration that Martin Luther King indicated is a result of having no justice, and that boils down sometime into some acts of I don't want to say violence because it's not violent. It's not violent to paint a sign. So we have this black community split right down the middle with the establishment now that will fit nicely into the pocket of the white establishment when they release the no prosecution decision, like you said, probably on Memorial Day. Because we're being set up by the black establishment. We're being told how dangerous it was to paint a 6-inch letter or 6 inches of letters on somebody's public sidewalk in front of the house. How terrible that is. What he could have said, if he had a progressive bone in his body, if he wasn't chained to the establishment here in Grand Rapids, he could have said, my goodness, we've waited X amount of days for a decision. While it may not be proper to go to individual homes, we can certainly understand the black community's frustration. Mm-hmm. All we have are some protest allowances, Mr. Moody. We have no action from the criminal justice system. We have no guarantee from the courthouse that there'll be any prosecution. All we get is a continued view of a man being shot point blank in the back of the head. And so therefore, I don't condone those acts of going to the individuals' homes, but I certainly understand them. And what I do is I urge the white prosecutor attorney to get up off his haunches and get us a prosecution, because this is being seen as a stall. Now, does that represent maybe what a progressive would say from a black leader? We're not hearing out of Moody's mouth. Channel 8's gobbling up like white pablum. The white establishment, hey, we got a black man, we got a black leader. Yeah. Condemning the actions of those crazy radicals out there that want justice. That's what we have.
I'll just remind everybody about what Martin Luther King Jr. once said, because everybody wants to quote Martin Luther King Jr. for promoting peace. It was also the same Martin Luther King Jr. that once said that violence is the language of the unheard. People forget that. I'll tell you, I'll go a step further. I don't have a problem with them protesting houses. I have zero problem with it. When you don't listen to the people at the commission meetings and you gavel people down and you adjourn the meeting during public comment, What do you think's going to happen? I blame the city leaders for this. They brought this on themselves, my opinion.
Yeah.
They absolutely did.
Put this on the scales in the hand of Mother Justice that stands outside the courtrooms, right? Put this on the scales. On one side, we have people ramming metal rods down the throats of guards. We have bear spray being sprayed into the face. We have men being crushed in revolving doors. And I could go on and I could go on and I could go on, because supposedly of the frustration of the masses, it's been termed now peaceful protesters and the actions of patriots. On the other hand, on the other scale, on Mother Justice's forearm, on the other scale, we have some graffiti painted, in some cases on public sidewalks. We have a brick that wasn't thrown, was placed on the yard, that it didn't do any damage. There was no damage done to these homes. Anybody should be, if you're a black leader, should be equating the frustration that resulted in some action. They've tried other forms of action. They peacefully protested. They marched from the crime scene when the man was shot all the way downtown. They went to Veterans Park. But after a while, thanks to the weather, thanks to holidays, thanks to the fact that people have jobs, it wanes. But many people, it still burns, and so they go and they say, I've got to be provocative. I'm going to write this on the brick. You tell me what's more violent, what you saw on January 6th or what you see from a group of people who, in my estimation, aren't being led, who are not being given a chance to really, really get at the problem here in West Michigan. You remember, Darren, Kent County was famous for bringing in white jurors, case after case after case.
Yep.
Only until one man, I think he was an ex-football player, I can't think of his name, discovered the preponderance of jurors being taken from Rockford. And guess what? They're all Caucasians.
And excluding the zip code 49507, which is a heavily black neighborhood.
Yeah, I want to go to the black church somewhere that's going to preach that Sunday. That's going to say, hey, wait a minute. We've got an historical precedent set here. Kent County is used to having white rule, is used to stymie black voices. And here's an example of it. It took place right here, and quote the dates. And now we have a man who's never, really ruled against a policeman in any of his tenure of office, and he's stalling. Where's that pulpit at? No, you're going to hear Moody's mantra. That's what you're going to hear, which is just going to water down and confuse the black community more and more. And they got to swallow one more blatant murder right in front of their faces.
Yep. Let me continue here. This was a statement that was issued by Mayor Rosalynn Bliss. Here's her quote. While I understand people's frustration and anger, acts of violence and vandalism doesn't get us to just outcomes. I'm disappointed in these most recent incidents of vandalism. Social activism is a valuable part of our democracy, but targeted vandalism designed to intimidate is not. The challenges confronting our city require respectful engagement so that we can reach thoughtful solutions. Intentional vandalism is an empty response to the important issues we face. End of quote. Let me once again remind people, property damage is not violence. Period. End of story. Right there it is. And let me rattle off one more quote. Those who make peaceful evolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. You remember who said that, didn't you? John F. Kennedy.
Yeah. And the condition in Grand Rapids, my feeling on it, Darren, is that it's the most absolute community, black community in Michigan. They're absolutely led around by the establishment and the very few progressive leaders, if there's any that I know of. You never hear their voice. You don't hear. I can't point to them. I can't point to a progressive church. Can't do it.
No.
Cannot do it. And the black leaders suck up to the white establishment and bid them and espouse their objectives. That's the case at this point. I don't know if you have seen anything from our friend in Grid Magazine that's talking about the stall. I've been looking daily. I don't see that.
No, I haven't seen it either.
And I'm scratching my head. I really am scratching my head.
There's a law. I was just going to say, Jack. There's a law professor that was just recently interviewed for Bridge Magazine, and I cannot remember her name. She's calling for a special prosecutor to be appointed for the Patrick Lyoya investigation. Let me continue. Let me read you this paragraph, Jack, and let me get your thoughts on the way Channel 8 phrased this. Protest is nothing new in the streets and at City Hall. Protesters upset over the police shooting in Lyoya have commandeered the last two city commission meetings. Both the April 26th and May 10th meetings were adjourned early due to the protests. Commandeered. That's going to be the new word that Channel 8 uses. I'm sure 13's going to pick up on it. I'm sure 3's going to pick up on it. I'm sure 17's going to pick up on it. And I'm sure that the Grand Rapids mess is going to pick up on it too. Unbelievable. Moody was frustrated by the personal nature of Monday night's incidents. Quote, you can't change anything by attacking people and arguing with people. You got to be willing to sit down and say, you know what? Let's put down our differences and let's have a conversation about this. I want the community to be mindful of the fact that there are some lines we should not cross that we won't be able to get back from. End of quote. Again, the problem is the city commission is sticking their fingers in their ears and going, la, 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 when people are trying to speak during public time. You know, you can't have it both ways, city commission. You cannot have it both ways.
Well, the time that the people stand there is limited. There is no reception from the faces of the commissioners. There's no reciprocation. I don't know where this conversation that Moody referred to is going to take place. It's not happening in the hall, the commissioner's hall there, that's for sure.
No, absolutely not. You think they're going to take any appointments from Jeff Smith or anybody else? Hell no, they know who Jeff is. You think they're going to take an appointment from you or me? Rosalynn Bliss absolutely knows who I am and what I'm all about. I've made it a point to tell her for 10 years, over 10 years.
Well, I will repeat, the seat that Moody has and that Womack has, who really tries to play the progressive card, right?
Yeah.
The two diamonds, that's what he plays. But what happens is that they're granted a seat at the table as long as they don't buck the system. Mm-hmm. Their job is to try and keep the black population calmed down and talk about what's proper and not proper. I'm looking for a firebrand, and there's not one there. There's just not one in the black community.
No. The last firebrand this town saw left a few weeks ago after Patrick Lyoya's funeral, and that is Al Sharpton. I'll just say it.
Yeah, I don't have verbatim what he said, but in essence, he said, hey, you're going to have to do some action. Yep. Black community and black ministers. The demand to get the name of the officer had never been made. Days and days, hours and hours prior to Sharpton's arrival here in Grand Rapids, there wasn't a black minister who demanded that name. They didn't demand anything.
Yeah. Let me continue the story here. City manager Mark Washington told News 8 he understands people's strong feelings but cannot condone vandalism. In a Zoom call Tuesday with Channel 8, Washington said, quote, this has been a very trying time for our community. There are a lot of emotions and frustrations around the officer-involved shooting that resulted in the killing of Patrick Lyoya, and understandably so. And while there's still a pending investigation with the Michigan State Police and the prosecutor's office for the determination of charges, I understand the community's frustration and the need for answers. But we are following the process, and right now I don't have control of that investigatory process. What I do have some influence on directly right now is the proposed budget. We have proposed several elements of reform that help to improve transparency and accountability to make sure that we have a safe community, but to continue to advance equity. End of quote. By the way, they had a special meeting of the city commission this past Tuesday. Did you happen to see any of it? I know there were more protesters there.
I saw a little footage of it, yeah.
Did they gavel the meeting down like they have the last two meetings? Or did they actually listen for once?
I think there was a limitation. I don't know what happened that caused them to truncate the talk session. The one prior was swearing, supposedly. They're not going to.
Which, by the way, is protected free speech. We've talked about the cussing canoeist. There is no law in Michigan that can be enforced anymore for swearing. If you don't like it, that's just too bad for you. Oh, my God. These people are just unbelievable, Jack. Washington said, quote, there are appropriate ways for the public to offer feedback to its local government, end of quote. You want to know what the solutions are? Calling or emailing their commissioners and attending public meetings to make their opinions heard. Yeah, if you can get your opinions heard, if they're not gaveling you down. Washington continues, quote, I look forward to hearing those members of the public tonight who will come and acknowledge their names and their concerns about what they would like to see in their local government and what they would like to see in changes in terms of the future, end of quote. They got a lot of nerve, Jack. They really do.
Yeah, it's a hard job keeping the facade of a transparent meeting or keep really making it look like you care about the clientele that come in with simple demands. You can put it in a simple sentence. That is justice in the sentencing and in the conviction of the murder of another black man here in Grand Rapids. That's all they want. And it's not going to happen. It's not happening now. It's not going to happen. He is being paid. He'll continue to get paid because he will not lose his job. He will not be prosecuted. And all the delay is formed to do is to keep people as calm as possible and let time wear down the moment of angst. That's all they're doing. Yeah. It's sickening. I'd move out. But the next city down the street is just as racistly structured as this one. Across the board, they're ubiquitous.
Yeah,
there is no justice. There's no justice in Buffalo.
No.
The monstrous murder there of 10 innocent people. The guy walked away. The shooter murdered 10 people.
Yeah,
and we'll have a FundMe group in his name here.
Yeah,
he would be hailed a hero.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's continue this before we move on to Buffalo real quick. Washington said his proposed budget for the next fiscal year includes a number of equity initiatives, including community engagement and use of force training for Grand Rapids Police and a significant funding increase for the Office of Oversight and Public Accountability, which acts as a watchdog for the police department. Yeah, let me tell you who's on that committee. We just told you a few weeks ago. Ed Kettle, who used to do a radio show on WPRR when I was the station manager. He is a cop apologist. Right there is what you get on your oversight committee, folks. Washington also recognized calls to invest in housing and economic development for historically underserved communities. Washington said, quote, this year's budget accomplishes both. There's money to ensure that there are basic services that continue in the police department, but we've also invested in other areas more aggressively, end of quote. One last comment from me, and then we'll move on to the shooting in Buffalo. If you have any information about the graffiti, do me a favor. Keep your fucking mouth shut. Snitches get stitches.
There you go.
Make sure you call Silent Observer. It's property damage. Jesus Christ. Unbelievable.
Let's talk about Buffalo, I'll tell you.
Yeah. So Buffalo on Saturday, a white kid, he's a kid basically, drove 3.5 hours from his home to a top supermarket in Buffalo in a very predominantly black city, walked into the supermarket and started mercilessly, randomly killing people. He shot 13, 10 of them died, including a security guard who was a former Buffalo police officer. This little waste of space has been charged with 10 counts of murder, and I hope New York has the death penalty. I'd fry his ass. Sorry.
They don't have the death penalty.
Which is a shame.
I've never seen pictures of the white victims. Have you?
No.
People that were killed. I see the 10 black faces. I've never seen a white face that was killed.
No. There were I believe 2 people were injured were white.
Well, initially we were told there were 2 people that were killed that were white. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that as it is, the other thing that to me is really indicative. When this happened, the prosecutors there in that county, and I can't remember the name of the county, they displayed this was so egregious that we're going to get the judge out of his bed into the courthouse. He's going to be arraigned right now.
Yes.
The court was... Now, what that tells me is that they realize that justice delayed is not justice at all.
Exactly.
That's what is usually served on a plate to the black community is dragging feet, obfuscation, delays, got to see this test, got to have another study, got to consult here, I got a holiday in between here. So they were on their high horse. They were going to get this guy arraigned pronto. What does that tell you in Grand Rapids? There is no sensitivity to that. There's no Moody saying we want to have quick action, because unless justice is swift, it's not justice at all. They understood that, at least for a few minutes, in Buffalo. And the other thing I don't understand is there is no information that the parents were responsible in any way for raising this monster. He may be 18, but from what I understand, he had the wheels turning for this murder for years. Did he not? He drove there 2 or 3 months ago, so he would have been. He would have been in the home as a minor under the tutelage of these parents, and you don't know anything at all about the parents. Nothing. You're not being told a single thing. You're not being told that there's a big Trump banner. I'm not saying that's for fact, but you're not being told anything like their political persuasion, that they're Trump supporters, that they're conservatives. As far as I know, nobody has even known their name or anything about them.
Yeah.
So the fix is on already with this.
Yeah.
I'm sickened by the stories of the parents, getting down on a human level here. The woman that was taking care of her husband, who was in a home. Some of these are just fine people.
Yeah,
shopping,
and he doesn't. And by the way, the family has not told him yet.
Yeah, how can they? Yeah.
God, what would that do to him? I mean, this is the stuff that people need to really, really, really think about.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's everything. Everybody is so goddamn selfish these days. It's all me, 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 me. I said when I started this show, me, 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 me is going to ruin this country. And my prediction has come true so far. It just gets worse and worse year after year. And it started in the 80s with Reagan, and it's gotten progressively worse. Now, there's a juxtaposition of words. Progressively worse.
Yeah.
Shoot, I wish Carlin was still alive. I'm sure he could do a full 10 minutes on progressively worse and the juxtaposition of those two words.
Well, it's an environment of rampant hedonism. I look at these people in Ukraine fighting by the hour to stay alive, men leaving their families to go fight, holed up in a basement of a steel factory for months, very little food. And then I look at our society, our hedonistic society, that doesn't give a damn as long as there's one more satisfaction to be realized tonight. They really don't, they don't show up with any care or concern. And what happened in Buffalo, I don't know. Have you thought the response is proportionate to the crime, the outcry? It's already dulled down. It's, I mean, really, it was the worst, most shocking scene for months, and now the news cycle has just kind of jumped over it, and
because that's just what the news does. It's been like that ever since I got into the business. It's always the next big thing. What's the next big headline? You know. It should be that this man's a right-wing conservative conspiracist that followed the leading of right-wing blogs. Yeah. And then tailor that into some kind of gun control. Well, then then you see some of these posts. He was really against Fox Propaganda Channel because they a bunch of Jews and da 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 da. Yeah, I haven't seen really any proof of any of this. I've seen some memes where they say, 21st Century Fox, and they list all these different people that are Jewish, that are in the upper echelons, executives of Fox or whatever. Well, I got news for you, folks. 21st Century Fox dissolved in 2019 because most of it was sold off to Disney. The rest of it that was kept by Rupert Murdoch and his family was renamed Fox Corporation. So there you go. You need to do your research before you start sharing memes. Unbelievable.
Yeah, you can't be a maladjusted teen and plan for months, go and survey the aisles in the grocery store, feed off of the face or the internet for months and months, unless you have a doctrinal or an objective ideology that we see flowing from these right-wing groups promoting this kind of violence and racism.
Yeah.
No child at 18 could just formulate this on their own. I don't care if they have acne problems. I don't care if their girlfriend didn't go to the prom with them. No, this is the fruit of a long propaganda channeled hatred and violence that's out there, that's being fed into these minds as we talk, Darren, right now.
Absolutely. Jack, I want to mention this story real quickly before we move on to Off the Cuff. Some good news for women in the state of Michigan. This is Ed White writing for the Associated Press. This was published at Wood Television. Also contributing to the story are Rachel Van Gilder, Anna Skog, and Kyle Mitchell from Wood Television. This is out of Lansing. A Michigan Court of Claims judge has put a hold on the state's 1931 abortion ban, meaning it would not be enforced in the event that Roe v. Wade is overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. In a Tuesday order, Judge Elizabeth Gleicher granted a preliminary injunction ordering the Michigan Attorney General's office, named as a defendant in the suit by Planned Parenthood of Michigan, not to enforce the ban. Gleicher said there is a strong likelihood that plaintiff Planned Parenthood will succeed in its challenge of the 1931 law, which makes performing an abortion a felony in Michigan, but which has no practical effect since the 1973 Roe v. Wade ruling. Planned Parenthood had argued that it was unconstitutional, which it is. The judge said, quote, "After 50 years of legal abortion in Michigan, there can be no doubt but that the right of personal autonomy and bodily integrity enjoyed by our citizens includes the right of a woman, in consultation with her physician, to terminate a pregnancy. From a constitutional standpoint, the right to obtain a safe medical treatment is indistinguishable from the right of a patient to refuse treatment." End of quote. The judge added that if the U.S. Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, which a draft document leaked earlier this month indicated may happen, Planned Parenthood and its clients, quote, "face a serious danger of irreparable harm. The balancing of hardships strongly weighs in the plaintiff's favor. Maintenance of the status quo will not harm the Attorney General." End of quote. Gleicher said other Michigan laws regulating abortion will remain in full effect. The injunction is preliminary only and does not act as a final ruling. The parties must tell the court within the next 30 days whether a trial should be scheduled. The lawsuit by Planned Parenthood, which performs abortions, is one of two legal challenges in the state. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who supports abortion rights, has asked the Michigan Supreme Court to bypass lower courts and declare the 91-year-old law unconstitutional. We'll have more on that in future shows. Right now, though, I want to get to Off the Cuff for this episode, and I've got two stories here. The first one is by Don Sweeney, writing for the Sacramento Bee. This is dated May 16th. Listen to this, Jack. A San Jose police officer called to a family's home for a disturbance, exposed himself, and masturbated in front of a father, mother, and daughter.
Wow.
Yeah. Prosecutors say that 32-year-old officer Matthew Dominguez, a 4-year veteran of the San Jose Police Department, faces a charge of indecent exposure. He is currently on administrative leave, according to the Santa Clara District Attorney's Office. District Attorney Jeff Rawson said in a statement, quote, "Law enforcement officers respond to our homes to help crime victims, not terrorize, traumatize, and create new victims." End of quote. Yeah, tell that to Patrick Lyoya, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Rosen also called the incident beyond disturbing. Dominguez reported with two other officers to an April 21st report of a disturbance at a home. After learning the family member responsible for the domestic violence call had left, he sent the other two officers to find him. Dominguez then unzipped his pants and fouled himself in front of the family's 23-year-old daughter, then exposed himself to her mother. That's according to documents obtained by SF Gate. They told the father, who spotted Dominguez masturbating in the kitchen. Isn't that lovely? By the way, if he's convicted, Dominguez could face up to 1 year in jail and could be put on the sex offender list for 10 years.
You remember the Norman Rockwell painting of the policeman sitting on the stool with the little boy with his arm around him?
Yeah.
Just think of the difference. My mind doesn't want to put that image out there. That's too much.
Yeah. Our last off-the-cuff story, this one we got to put a happy ending on this. This is Bill Chappell writing for National Public Radio. This is dated May 12th. She didn't say a word, and that only made her message resonate more powerfully. Valedictorian Elizabeth Bonker recently delivered the commencement speech at Rollins College in Florida, urging her classmates to serve others and embrace the power of sharing. Bonker, who is affected by non-speaking autism, hasn't spoken since she was 15 months old, but thanks to an accepting attitude from her peers and teachers and help from technology, she has overcome many challenges and graduated at the top of her class at the Orlando area school. She told her fellow graduates, quote, "God gave you a voice, use it. And know the irony of a non-speaking autistic encouraging you to use your voice is not lost on me. Because if you can see the worth in me, then you can see the worth in everyone you meet." End of quote. Bonker used text-to-speech software to deliver the commencement address, an honor for which she was chosen by her fellow valedictorians. She said, quote, "I have typed this speech with one finger with a communication partner holding a keyboard. I am one of the lucky few non-speaking autistics who have been taught to type. That one critical intervention unlocked my mind from its silent cage, enabling me to communicate and to be educated like my hero, Helen Keller." End of quote. In her speech, Bonker also evoked another hero, Fred Rogers, the Florida College's most famous alumnus. Last year, the school unveiled a statue of the man widely known as Mr. Rogers, and it has long embraced his lessons. Bonker said, quote, "When he died, a handwritten note was found in his wallet. It said, 'Life is for service.'" End of quote. She urged her classmates to rip off a piece of paper from their program, write those words down, and tuck the message away in a safe place. She said, quote, "We are all called to serve as an everyday act of humility, as a habit of mind, to see the worth in every person we serve." End of quote. After graduating, Bonker plans to use what she has learned to help people who face situations like hers. She said, quote, "There are 31 million non-speakers with autism in the world who are locked in a silent cage." End of quote. Her life's work, she said, will be to help them express themselves. Bonker recently launched a nonprofit organization, Communication for All, which aims to break down the barriers facing non-speakers by providing communication resources, particularly in schools. She'll also work to educate the public about the millions of people affected by non-speaking autism. As she has stressed in the past, it is not a cognitive or intellectual disorder. An estimated 25 to 30% of children with autism spectrum disorder are non-speaking or minimally speaking, according to recent studies. So, congratulations to her.
Diametrically opposed story to the last one. That's how I gotta say that was uplifting. And you told me about that before, but having read it, that's inspirational.
Yes, indeed. And guess what? We are already out of time for this week. We'll be back next week. I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Jack Prince.
Please support independent media, the First Amendment, and a woman's right to choose.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.